The sun had barely broken over the small town of Maple Creek when Michael Turner sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. He was in his mid-40s, a once charismatic youth pastor who had recently stepped back from his church duties after a difficult season in life. His thoughts had become a battlefield, a war zone where fear, doubt, shame, and guilt clashed violently every morning. The silence of the house, nestled in the stillness of dawn, felt louder than ever. Michael wasn't alone in the house. His wife, Laura, was still asleep in the next room, and their teenage son, Caleb, had already left for basketball practice. But in his mind, Michael felt utterly isolated. No one could hear the voice that whispered, "You're a failure," or the shadow that lingered, reminding him of past mistakes and what he called spiritual inadequacy. It hadn't always been like this. There had been a time when Michael woke up with energy and joy, praying with confidence and leading others with conviction. But over the last year, a combination of stress, ministry burnout, and personal grief after the sudden loss of his father had sent him into a spiral. He'd slowly withdrawn from friends, skipped Bible studies, and found himself merely going through the motions of life. He knew what the problem was. The real war wasn't external. It wasn't the responsibilities of work or the occasional disagreements with Laura. It was internal. The real enemy was within. Negative thoughts, spiritual apathy, mental fatigue, and a quiet but growing depression. This morning, however, Michael sensed something different. Something holy. Something urging him not to run but to fight. And he knew, instinctively, that the only way to win the battle in his mind was through prayer. Michael reached for his Bible on the nightstand, dusted its cover, and opened to Romans 12 verse 2. "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That verse struck him like a wave of fresh wind. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to pray. "Father," he whispered, his voice breaking, "I'm tired. Not just physically, but in my soul. My mind is filled with fear, and I don't want to live like this anymore. I've believed lies. I've let discouragement win. But I come to you this morning, not with perfect words, but with a broken spirit that longs for your healing." Tears streamed down his cheeks. He continued, "Lord, renew my mind. Take these thoughts that have plagued me, thoughts of failure, thoughts of fear, thoughts that I'll never be good enough, and replace them with your truth. I know I'm not alone in this battle. Your word says you'll never leave me nor forsake me. So, I choose today to stand, not in my strength, but in yours." He opened his eyes and whispered again, "Help me win the battle in my mind." Laura stirred in the next room, her footsteps padding softly toward the kitchen. Michael didn't move. For the first time in weeks, he didn't feel the weight of despair dragging him back down. Instead, he felt peace. It wasn't an overwhelming flood, but it was real, like the first glow of sunrise breaking through a night storm. At breakfast, Laura smiled gently. "You look rested." Michael sipped his coffee and nodded. "I prayed this morning. Really prayed. I think I'm finally ready to fight back." Laura reached across the table and took his hand. "I've been praying for that. I've been praying for you." Michael smiled, something warm flickering inside him. He knew that prayer wasn't a one-time fix. The battle in the mind was a daily one, and it would return tomorrow. But now he had a weapon, one he had neglected for too long, prayer rooted in God's promises. The next few weeks were a journey of transformation. Michael began waking up early again, not out of duty, but because his spirit longed for connection. Each morning, he opened his Bible and prayed not just for peace, but for clarity, identity, and mental strength. He wrote scriptures on index cards and taped them around the house, on the bathroom mirror, the fridge, and even on the dashboard of his car. Philippians 4 verse 8 became a morning mantra. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, think about such things. The thoughts still came, those old voices of failure and fear, but now Michael had a response. He no longer let them fester in silence. He answered them with truth. When the thought, "You'll never change," entered his mind, he'd counter with, "I am being renewed day by day," 2 Corinthians 4 verse 16. When "you're not enough" whispered in his soul, he'd declare, "His grace is sufficient for me." The people around him noticed. Laura watched her husband become lighter, more hopeful, more engaged. Caleb, who once hesitated to speak openly with his dad, began joining him for morning walks where they'd talk about life, school, and even God. One evening, Michael received a phone call from his former church's pastor. They needed someone to speak at a men's breakfast. "Just share your story," the pastor said. "People need to hear it." Michael hesitated, unsure if he was ready to stand in front of others again. But Laura, sitting beside him, gave him a nod of encouragement. The next Saturday morning, in a small church hall with the smell of bacon and coffee lingering in the air, Michael stood at the podium. He looked out at the group of men, some older, some younger, all dealing with silent battles of their own. He spoke from the heart. "I want to talk about the war we rarely speak of, the one in our minds. The fear, the anxiety, the shame. I've walked that road. I've lived months in silence, waking up every morning feeling defeated before the day even began. But I found a way out. Not through pretending, not through busy schedules or distractions, but through honest, raw, and consistent prayer." He paused, scanning the room. Prayer isn't magic. It's not about saying the right words to get the right results. It's about surrender. It's about reminding our minds that there is a higher truth than our thoughts. When we speak God's word over our minds, we declare war on the lies we've believed. After the event, one man approached him with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he said. "I thought I was alone. I needed to hear this." Michael smiled, realizing that his journey, his battlefield, was being redeemed to help others find their way to victory. Back at home, Laura greeted him with a warm hug. "How did it go?" Michael held her close. "Better than I imagined. It felt like I was finally doing what God called me to do again. And not because I had it all together, but because I didn't." That night, before heading to bed, Michael knelt beside his bed again and prayed. "Father, thank you. Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for loving me through my brokenness. Keep transforming my mind. Help me not just win the battle today, but every day ahead. Not by might, not by power, but by your Spirit." He rose, a man still in progress, but no longer defeated. The battle in his mind wasn't over, but now he had armor. He had weapons. And he had peace. And every morning after that, before the world stirred, before doubts could take root, Michael would rise, open his Bible, and pray, not out of obligation, but out of intimacy. Because he knew that the greatest battles are won not in the noise of achievement, but in the quiet of surrender.